Hi everyone, and welcome to season 8 of Behind Your Eyes. And in this second episode, the lovely Shanelle is my guest. So hi Shanelle, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm so excited to be here. I guess a little bit about myself. I'm a single mom with 2 kids. I am hustling and bustling, starting a brand new pageant here in Canada, and one that'll stretch out towards the world. So just in helping people is something that I love to do, especially overcoming trauma.
Mm,
Uh, just helping people reset a beautiful mindset going
mm,
forward into their new life.
mm. Awesome. Well, I always start with the same question, and that is a sincere, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. Yes, thank you.
That's the most important. And you mentioned in the bio that you sent me that you have overcome domestic violence, and I would love to know a bit more if you are willing to share, of course, what that was like and how you got out of that situation.
Absolutely. And I actually have a documentary that I can share the link with you, and you can share with your viewers and listeners, just so I don't have to go into the details.
Mhm.
But with domestic violence, I actually got into the relationship post being Miss Canada, like being involved in the beauty pageant. I would definitely say that based on a little bit of my upbringing, I didn't see those red flags at the beginning of the relationship, but during the time, I think at the end of the day, what really brought me out of that situation and kind of living in fear every single day with the person that supposedly loves you and you love them, especially creating a family with them. Um, over time, when it comes to domestic violence, people can tell you over and over that it's unsafe or that they don't like the person. That's usually
Mm,
how it starts, right?
mm,
Um, you really have to figure it out for yourself.
mm,
And you have to be really honest with yourself in terms of, what is it that's really going on here?
mm,
Um, and so there was a huge cycle. The domestic violence life is full of cycles, and that's what draws the victim in, because not always is a bad day, right? There's a
no.
lot of really good days. You're building a relationship just like anybody else. There just happens to be a dangerous component to it.
Mm,
And when you're in love, you don't really see that.
mm,
Especially when it's so good during the good times, and then when it's bad, it's like, and it's not every day. So you try your best in the relationship, and that's what I did.
mm,
And over time, like I said, I had my family wasn't really keen on him. A couple of my friends weren't keen on him, and slowly your support system outside of his family dissipates to the
mm,
point where you may not have very many people or none at all. And that's what happened to me. So there was very few people left. And of course, my mom was still there, and she was my outreach. So I reached out to her the day that I felt like, okay, it's time, I'm ready.
mm,
And that was the first day of healing, because that was the first day I finally, after leaving several times,
mm.
that I had decided that this cycle was going to break, and this cycle was going to break for good.
Mm. So when at first did you start to notice those signs? Because like you said, the friends and family were already telling you that, I don't feel too good about this guy, but you of course have to notice it yourself and recognize it yourself. So when did that change for you?
Right. So I had this feeling inside all along that there was something just not right.
Mm,
And at this point, my son was born, and I was pregnant with my daughter. So they're 15 months apart. So we were at the beginning stages of pregnancy, maybe 3 months in, and there was an altercation that had happened, um, and it was a bad one that is described in the documentary, and at that point, I realized that I was no longer safe, but not just I wasn't safe anymore, my kids weren't safe anymore. And once that thought entered my thought process and my feelings, that's when it's almost like Mama Bear steps up
Yeah.
and she's going to protect her kids no matter what. I often say this when I'm talking to different people, that if it weren't for having kids, I
Mm-hmm.
would still be in it because I could fight for myself,
Right.
right?
Mm.
And oftentimes, as years progress, the longer you stay, the more danger it becomes. Another fear too is when you leave, especially
Mm.
having children with him, it actually becomes even more dangerous to leave, especially with the things that were happening in our household. So what happened with me is I ended up going into a safe house, so a place where he doesn't know, for several years, as we sorted out criminal court, family court, and all of that stuff, and kind of resettling myself. So I knew it was within the last couple months, and it was interesting because a week prior to leaving,
Mm.
my mom was watching my son while I was working. I hadn't had enough working time. I was coming out of school, so when I was pregnant, so I didn't have too many hours built up to take the parental leave.
Mm.
Um, so what happened was I was going back into school. I was going to work part-time and it was close by my mom's place. So I would drop off my son in the morning and just like lay on the couch. I was exhausted. And one morning, a situation happened and I told my mom, I said, I don't know when, just be ready. That's all I said. At this
Mm.
point, my mom thought that the relationship was getting better, and that we were working things out, and that it was becoming a safer place for me. She had inklings of what was going on.
Mm.
Um, but it was a week after that when my mom got the phone call and packed up my stuff. So already I was preparing
Yeah.
myself to leave. It was just a matter of timing.
Yeah. Mentally preparing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the hardest part, right?
Absolutely. Like I remember standing in the shower the week prior, just like praying and saying, just show me the way out, because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to get out.
Yeah. So how did you go from there to a safer, steadier, healthier life for yourself?
Right. So I think one of the first steps was getting into a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in a safe place and once you've stabilized your body and your emotions and your nervous system, and for me, how I started doing that, like, yeah, my faith is really important to me. So really having that supportive atmosphere that supports and has the same faith as me was really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think definitely restructuring my life completely. So for me, shortly after, I knew that I needed to make a living. I needed to make a life and a career for myself. So I decided to go back to school,
Mm-hmm.
while my kids were young. So in this time frame where I had the financial support, I had the physical support of my family, during that time, to go back to school and to gain some knowledge for the workforce, for the working field, and landing a career.
Yeah.
So that was priority, but also moving the body, getting it out, getting you active, being active with it's been a journey, really.
Yeah.
Uh, there's many things that I've had to do in order to kind of restabilize a safe and healthy
Mm-hmm.
life. And I think it's changed because as I've healed and as I've grown into the woman that I am and the mom that I am,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you need different things at different times in your life in order to keep, but as long as the goal is I want to live a healthy life and this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I see it looking like, as long
Yeah.
as you have that idea, you start working towards that.
And how essential, because you mentioned like your faith was very important to you in your healing. To me, also faith resembles, because I'm not a religious person, but to me, faith resembles a kind of hope. It's hope giving. How essential is that in your healing?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Especially coming from like anybody in any kind of situation. For me, my faith actually absolutely brought me hope.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that this greater power for me, it's God, and for that power to have seen, like to shown me the support and the safety that was given throughout my life and different times in my life, and especially during that moment, I knew that it was like a supernatural moment that I was able to leave when and leave in a safe way when he wasn't home. And so everything just worked out so perfectly
Mm-hmm.
that I knew that there was something protecting me. I knew that there was something out there that was saying you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I always think about it as like if I'm making the right decision, things will line up in the way that they're meant to,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be safe and it'll just work out. So I've seen that happen over and over in my life several times. So my faith is very important. I think not only hope, but it gives you this idea that no matter what, you have this source that can protect you
Mm-hmm.
if you call on it, if you ask,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. And you also sent me a quote that really inspired me. It says, I've become aware when a low point begins to come on. And to me, that's huge when you're in a healing journey. To me, that all starts with the awareness. So I would love to know how you reached that point, how you got that awareness.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked this. Yeah, it's so true. And I think over the course of like these 11 years, especially because I'm really focusing on my healing,
Mm,
I want to know when those low points are happening or when they're on their way. Because I have kids, I can't just mope around. I can't just take a day off.
yeah.
Um, so I have to be aware. And it just so happens, and I'm going to share this because it could resonate with someone. And even though it's very personal, um, I was mind blown. I hadn't dealt with depression in a clinical perspective,
Mm,
but we all have super low days, right?
yeah.
There was one point where I had come off of, I was very ill actually, and I had 10 weeks off. I had pneumonia and I was in the
Mm,
hospital. And after, as I was healing, I wasn't going to work for those 10 weeks. And I was very, very ill. And
mm,
after I was on so many steroids and medications, one of the biggest things happened at the end was my doctor took everything off right away.
yeah.
And there was a huge withdrawal to the point where I was like rocking back and forth in the doctor's office. Like, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm feeling so anxious. I don't have motivation to do anything. Um, so obviously a lot of that was triggered by the medication that I was on because my body was really fighting for its life for
Yeah.
several weeks. And so it was at that point when I started realizing how the body was acting.
Mm,
Uh, and one of the things that I noticed is when I was starting to get overwhelmed with life,
mm,
um, it would be very difficult for me to go and jump in and have a nice shower.
mm,
And one of the things that I noticed over the course of several years was I was forcing myself to have a shower because I know that that's important to have
mm,
and need to stay clean.
yeah.
But it wasn't oh, I need to do this because I need to do this. It is, I have to do this,
Mm,
right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, and I would just not want to have a shower. So there would be days where I just, in mom life, sometimes you have days where you don't have a shower, but when you're going to work, you have to. So I would literally go to the gym and do a cycling class during lunch and jump in the shower because I knew I had to have a shower. But like having a shower at home, for some reason, I couldn't do it unless I was like going out. Then of course I'd take the time. But first thing in the morning or in the evening, I just didn't have the motivation to do that.
Yeah.
And it was last year when I was actually launching my documentary and I was speaking to multiple people. And there's this one person who's experienced domestic violence. And I was going through a story, and I'll share the story with you because it resonates with this moment. And so my shower when I was in the relationship was my safe spot. I knew that he wasn't coming in. I could have those 20, 30 minutes to myself. It was my safe place.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks prior to leaving, I think I can't remember exactly when, but it was at the end. And I was in the shower. It must have been maybe the last 2 weeks. And I was in the shower crying. And he came into the washroom and he pulled me out by the hair. And he's like, "What are you crying for?" And I said, I probably said something like, "I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I was pregnant. I was working. I have a toddler who is teething." There was a lot of going on top of the physical and emotional and verbal abuse happening. So of course I wasn't going to tell him the truth because it's a dangerous situation. But he's like, "I don't believe you. There must be something wrong." And I just said, "No, I'm just tired." And I wiped away my tears, threw my ponytail across the room. My head hit the wall. Then he banged it on the sink. That situation, I realized 11 or 10 years later that was the root problem of why I had anxiety going in and having a shower.
Right.
My safe place was no longer safe. And even though I had come out of it, that shower, that experience stayed within me, and I couldn't figure it out. I could not figure out why the shower was such a problem until I had that conversation with someone and the light bulb went off. And at that moment, I was like, well, now I know what the root problem is. I can heal from this.
Yeah. I applaud you for that because that takes a lot of effort. I know. So well done. Yeah, to me, like the healing process always starts with awareness because what you're aware of, you can start to change.
That's right. Exactly. And you have to be open enough to get there. And for me, I was on this healing journey, and you wouldn't think 10 years later this situation would still happen, but like we all say, healing is a journey, and you become triggered by different things. And until you find out what the root of that trigger is, that's the starting point of this next stage of healing.
Yeah, and healing is never linear. It's up and down and up and down. It can smack you in the face when you least expect it. Like, what? I thought I was healed.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then it's like, "Oh, sorry, no, not fully healed yet."
But know what? What I'm learning, and I had a situation late last year where I was meeting up with a friend, and there were some insecurities going on, and I reacted in a way that was out of character for me. And after, this person was just like, we all have a story and sometimes we can be triggered. And that definitely was triggered, and they were like, "I don't know what it was from." And it took me a couple weeks to kind of calm down from that because I thought I had done so much healing, and I thought that I was ready for this next step in life. And that situation taught me that, some people come into your life where you've healed, and there are still more things to be healed because you're starting this new, you have these new feelings, you have these new emotions. You're now integrating yourself into new social groups and new relationships. And because that's all new all over again, we all want to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And you come from trauma, that protection it's like a shield. It's like, no, you can't come past this.
Yeah.
Uh, but breaking down those walls carefully and being aware that those walls are up,
Hmm.
you do realize, I've come this far,
Yeah.
right? In that moment, it's like, I realized I have done so much healing.
Hmm.
Now it's time for the next layer. And that next layer is like an onion, and it's like so
Yeah.
much more deeper. And the deeper you go, the closer to your heart you go.
Yeah. To your true
And
self. Yeah.
yeah. And so when those walls are starting, when those triggers are happening,
Hmm.
it's just because you're now ready for that next step. You're now
Yeah.
ready to go back. You're now ready to release a little part of your heart.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what that situation taught me. It was like, you know what, Chanel, like, don't get defensive, just take a breath
Hmm.
and know that you're ready to open up a little bit more.
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful process.
Yeah. Scary and confronting, but
Mhm,
beautiful as
mhm.
well.
It
Yeah.
is.
And
Yeah.
how essential is it to have healthy boundaries in your life?
Very, very, very. And I think this is something like we constantly have to monitor in our lives and build and learn more about. Oh my gosh, my dog just jumped on the table.
He wants to be on.
That's never happened before. Um, hopefully she's just a second. Fluffy, get down, get down, get down. Go.
Yeah,
Sorry
he's
about
like, I have a story to tell too.
absolutely. Um, yeah, so boundaries are important. Boundaries are important to protect our energy, I think, is really important because we all vibrate at different, vibrations in terms of where we are in our healing, how much motivation we have. And when you begin to set up boundaries, depending on where you are in the relationship, no matter if it's like family, romantic, even children, you have to set boundaries. That's like one of the first things that we learn as parents is like, where are the boundaries for like between as a parent and a child, and instilling that authority figure
Mhm.
and not allowing them to trample on you or to make
Yeah.
these decisions, right? I'm at this stage now where my boundaries are starting to come down because my kids are at an age where I want them to be independent of their thoughts and to learn. So
Mhm.
boundaries change over time,
Yeah.
but it's important that you set up boundaries in order to protect yourself,
Mhm.
um, and to be honest about what you want to receive in terms of
Mm.
communication.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it works both ways. When you set up boundaries, you have to explain, like, okay, this is my boundary. This is why I have my boundary. And that's
Yes.
probably the hardest part because in your mind and in your heart, you know your boundaries, but then having to explain them to others, that's the harder part.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But
Wow.
essential in healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's important for us to, like I said, continue to monitor those boundaries and
Mhm.
put them up again if we need to, and re-communicate them also
Yeah.
if people are starting to,
To cross them. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And what does your current self-care practice look like?
Oh, I've got a couple different things. It really depends on what I'm going through.
Mhm.
In terms, I really do love to journal. Journaling
Mhm.
is something my body and my mind process words.
Yeah.
So journaling is very helpful to me.
Mhm.
Also meditation. And when I'm listening to like mindful meditations, um having and choosing one that relates to me is really important. Um, Meditations, I think, are important to my practice, um, mostly because it's instilling positive thoughts.
Mm.
And sometimes writing out and recording
Mm.
your own positive thoughts or your own goals and aspirations in a very calming voice
Mhm.
and with a little bit of music behind. I've done that sometimes too, not airplanes.
Well, if you want
And
to travel.
exactly, there's one flying over right now. But yeah, so I think like as we continue to grow and to heal, it's really important that we're constantly telling ourselves the positive things that are true.
Yeah.
We live in a society that is um full of different ideas,
Mhm.
right? And while those ideas can bring creativity out of you,
Mhm.
um, we have to protect ourselves as well. And I think we
Yeah.
need to continue to be mindful and
Yeah.
practice reconfirming the things that we do believe in ourselves or that we want to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, that's really important. And also sharing. I went through several years of my life knowing that I had gone through a really traumatic experience. And but there was something in my heart that says you need to share. And
Mhm.
finally, after I released the documentary and started doing some speaking events, um, sharing helps to bring things out as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a point in time, and I'm getting to that point now where I don't share my story in detail anymore. The documentary's there for that. But what I have been sharing is, like what we're talking about now. Okay, what does your practice look like?
Mhm.
Um, helping people does help yourself too. And
Yeah.
and so that's where my line of work on the side of my day career is helping people, and by preparing myself before speaking to them, or doing a little debrief after speaking to someone, it helps me check in with myself
Mhm.
because I need to be ready to help someone else.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's almost like there's an accountability
Mhm.
to continue working on myself
Yeah.
daily so that I can show up in a healthy way for someone else.
Mm. Yeah, that's, I think, essential when it comes to coaching, because I think when you want to help, it always comes from the heart. You do it with such a passion. I mean, I'm the same, but you always have to check back in with yourself, like, okay, how am I doing? Can I give now? Is my cup a bit empty? Do I have to refill it first?
Exactly. Absolutely. And that trickles into relationships. When we're in this coaching type of atmosphere,
Yeah.
uh we become more aware that this is the way that we also need to prepare for the people in our lives as well.
Mhm.
Not just coaching, but when we're stepping up and we're working on ourselves and continuing to heal, continuing to grow, that's then it kind of trickles into our kids' lives. It trickles into our
Mhm.
friends' lives and our
Yeah.
the people that we're surrounded by.
Yeah.
And then we can show up. We can show up in the way that we were truly designed to.
Yeah. Well, my last question is also always the same, and that is, when are you at your happiest?
Oh.
Mm.
So I honestly, when I'm at my happiest is when I have a really good schedule going on.
Mm.
Usually when I'm more busy
Yeah.
than I should be. But I think when I'm busy, it means that I'm organizing my time. I'm
Mm.
taking the time to work my body, like exercise. When I'm eating healthy, making good meals, like I love, love, love being in the kitchen,
Mm.
making yummy things too. Um, so when I'm at my happiest, when I feel like my world is just going, 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 but with some rest too.
Mm.
And um and that's something that I've also been learning over the course of several years is, with a busy life and being mom, and you have to take time out of your schedule to
Mhm.
do things for yourself. It's essential. I do find that when I'm too busy and I don't take those moments and times,
Mhm.
that's when I'm starting to deplete myself.
Mhm.
So having those moments, whether it's a date night out or getting out with some friends, or just doing something for myself, like going to the spa for like a
Mhm.
morning and
Lovely.
just, whatever works for you.
Mhm.
That's really important, and that keeps me in my happy space.
Mhm. Thank you so much for today, Chanel. It was truly a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It was lovely.